Hello, my name is Casey,
And I'm Dan.
and we play together in a local band here in Reno called Fine Motor. I play drums and I sing,
And I play guitar and sometimes piano.
and Dan
And
also
sometimes
sings.
sings.
Okay, so today we're going to talk to you about songwriting, right? We're all sort of cooped up in our houses these days, but potential upside to that is that we have a lot of time to get super creative and to experiment and explore our creative side and to spend maybe a little bit more time making stuff than we normally have. So there will be two parts of this video. In the first one, we're going to focus on kind of the anatomy of a song and talk about ideas for song structure.
And then in the second half, we're going to look at some examples of lyrics in existing songs and hopefully just give you some ideas for writing your own songs.
So yeah, hopefully at the end of this video, you'll feel inspired to venture out and write your own song. So
The other thing we should say from the beginning is all of these rules are meant to be broken.
yeah, the first rule of songwriting is that there are no rules to songwriting.
Yeah. So, as soon as you try one of these ideas, one of these structures, you should immediately write another song where you totally ignore what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we would do.
Yeah. Okay, so first we're going to examine song structure. And just like Dan was saying, right, there are no sort of rules here. But just like when you're starting any kind of new venture, right, if you're picking up a new skill, it can be really helpful to kind of study the ways that other people have done it before you go out and try to do something new. So these are not hard and fast rules, but just kind of some guidelines to get us started. But we definitely can and do encourage you to break those rules. Okay, so there are three main components of most of the songs that we are familiar with. There's a verse, there's a chorus, and then there's some kind of third part. And that third part can look a few different ways. Sometimes it's a bridge, sometimes it's an intro or an outro, sometimes it's a breakdown or some kind of solo or instrumental. Quite a few rock songs have guitar solos. That can be a pretty frequent third part. So these sections can go in any number of order, but most songs that we're familiar with put them in a pretty similar order. So we're going to start out by looking at an example from Beyonce. And as you listen to this song, what we want you to do is kind of listen to any changes that you hear. If you feel like there's a shift in the song in terms of energy level, in terms of feeling of any kind of take note of that. And we're going to talk about the different parts of this song and kind of what the anatomy of this song is.
I love this one.
It's a really good one. Okay.
Let's listen.
gone. All the single ladies, 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 all the single ladies. Now put your hands up.
Okay, so that was great. There's nothing like Beyonce to kind of put your day into a new gear, I think.
That's what I always say.
But one of our favorite bands when we were growing up is called Nirvana. And they are different in a lot of ways than Beyonce. But what we came to realize when we were setting up to do this songwriting thing is actually they use the same exact song structure as Beyonce.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they're a rock band, they're going for a different thing, and yet in terms of how they structure the song, it's exactly the same. So while you're listening through this one, it's called In Bloom. We want you to listen to the song for the same kinds of things that you're listening to in the Beyonce song. So what kind of qualities or traits do you notice in each part? What's happening in the different parts? How are the parts different from one another? And we'll kind of walk you through their order as we listen.
Okay, sounds good.
Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, here's Nirvana In Bloom.
Sell kids for food.
Okay, that was great.
Great tune. Listened to it a lot when I was growing up.
Same. So you may have noticed a similar structure between these two songs, which are in very different genres. So would you like to tell us what that structure is?
Sure. So this is what we call the classic pop song structure, which is verse, then chorus, and then back to a verse, and then to a chorus, and then to a third part, and then back to the chorus again.
Right. So, you definitely do not have to structure your song that way. But if you don't know where to begin and you want to try something out that's pretty foolproof, that is a really safe place to start. So we could find a lot more examples like that one of that structure. But that is for a different video. So, Dan and I were talking and we were wondering if we have songs that are sort of similar to this structure. And we do. This one is a little bit different, but it follows a pretty similar structure. So we wanted to play it for you guys. It's called Follow You, and it's not to be confused with the Phil Collins hit single.
Yeah. And so as we said, the third part is in a slightly different place in this song. So while you're listening through, see if you can figure out where it is and how is it different and what's going on.
Okay.
I'll go follow you around. Just watch you hang around town.
Okay, now we're back. Thanks for listening to Fine Motor. So as you probably noticed in Follow You, we had a similar beginning in terms of the verse and the chorus and the verse and the chorus, and then we add a third part as a kind of outro, right? Which is one option. So similar to the other two without being exactly the same. And this is kind of what we're getting at in the long run, which is you can take that basic structure and then you can kind of tweak it to your needs.
Yeah, think about it kind of like a puzzle, right? You can move the pieces around and decide how they fit best for you. But really, the only way to figure out how they fit together is to experiment and to try. So keep trying, keep rearranging those parts until you find something that clicks. Okay, so we've got sort of the basic parts down, right? We've got the verse, we've got the chorus, we've got our third part, but what goes into each of these parts? You might get sick of hearing us say this, but again, there are no rules. This is for you to kind of decide and feel out as an artist. But again, there are some conventions that we can follow as we're getting a little bit more familiar and building confidence as songwriters. In a verse, most of the time, especially if we look at the example from Beyonce and from Nirvana, usually our verses are a little bit kind of quieter, right? Usually there's one singer. A lot of times there's a narrative, right? We're getting told a story. And verses tend to be a little bit slower, a little bit more sparse. We're kind of setting the scene.
Great, yeah. And a lot of times one way to tell the difference is that the chorus in some ways will be the opposite of that. So the chorus usually in pop music, again, there's exceptions, will be louder. So whether you just literally turn up your guitar for that part, which is what Nirvana does, or in Beyonce, if you add some more instruments in and you kind of make a more elaborate arrangement for the chorus, add some more voices. There's a lot of different ways to attack it. I mean, you could add more drums. Maybe the drummer hits the cymbals a lot in the chorus, but they only stick to the hi-hat in the verse. There's a lot of different ways to kind of differentiate the two. But that's one of them. The other big things in terms of storytelling is a lot of times the chorus will kind of reflect on the story that's just been told in the verse. So the chorus a lot of times has more repetition. It has kind of catchy phrases that get stuck in your head. It might use some of the words might be the name of the song, right? This is kind of like the hook or the part that you're supposed to remember and kind of walk away with, right?
Yeah, that's the part that we get stuck in our head most of the time, is some part of the chorus, right?
Yeah, and the other big difference, and the Beyonce song for sure does this, is oftentimes in the chorus there's more voices singing, period. So they might all be Beyonce, but she might just be like double tracked or triple tracked or whatever.
Yeah. Almost all of the time, the chorus is going to feel like some sort of energy shift, like things are shifting into a higher gear and building. There's more energy, there's more volume. Choruses are often kind of just bigger feeling than verses.
Okay, great. And then in terms of a third part, for the sake of the video today, we want to keep things pretty simple. When you get deeper into musicology, these different, what we call the third part is actually kind of a grab bag. It's all kinds of different things. Just to kind of keep it simple in terms of how to put things together. For us, the third part here in these examples is really just a new opportunity to reflect again on everything else that's happened in the song, right? So if you think of the third part as a kind of bridge, what that means is basically like you have the verse, you're telling a story, you have the chorus where you reflect on that story. Then you have another verse where you add some new information, you tell more of the story, right? And then the chorus reflects on that again. And then the bridge is really your opportunity to look at things from yet a different angle. So in that sense, it's oftentimes more similar to a chorus in terms of storytelling, like you're kind of repeating things more, maybe not adding too much new information, but you are adding a new angle on whatever it is that you had been kind of singing about in the song.
And third parts don't have to have lyrics, right? Sometimes these can be instrumental. And this third part also gives your listeners sort of a break from the structure that you've established so far. And one of the best ways to use that is if it feels really good after the third part when you go back into the chorus or back into the verse. That's kind of familiar to the listener. And that feels like a moment of kind of release at that point. So that's another useful way to think about that third part.
Yeah, I think you're right. So you start to, by the time you get to the second chorus, you're kind of familiar with the song, you know what to expect. The bridge is an opportunity to take someone in a new kind of place, have them stand somewhere new in relation to everything that's going on. And then when you get back to the chorus or to the last verse, depending on how you end it, the listener feels relieved, right? Back to the familiar.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, welcome back. So welcome to part 2 of our video. So in this part, we're going to talk about lyrics as they relate to the song structures that we've been talking about, but also as their own kind of thing. So one of the things to realize about writing lyrics is you can use all the resources of poetry. It won't necessarily sound like a known poem, but you can use a lot of their tricks. So some of these are things like imagery, rhyme, metaphor or simile. We'll talk about that more in a second. But also things like point of view. In other words, who's telling the story? So let me give you an example from 2 that we already talked about. So the Beyonce song is told in first person, which means it's coming from someone who's saying, I was at the club, I did this, I saw that, and whatever. The Nirvana song, on the other hand, is told in third person, meaning it's kind of like a narrator who's outside of the action. So the chorus in that song is he's the one who likes all our pretty songs. So it's describing some other person in the third person using he, right? So despite the fact that those 2 songs have the same song structure, the point of view is totally different. And so you'll want to think about when you're writing your song, which one do I want to use?
Yeah, and there's no wrong answer in terms of which one you use, but each of those decisions that you're making as a songwriter are going to really change the feeling of your song overall. So sometimes a song written in first person in that I voice can have a very sort of intimate or vulnerable feeling, and that he, she, they, the third person can sometimes create a little bit of distance and can sort of take on the quality of an observer of life or of a certain scene, but it creates a little bit more distance. So both are great options, but it just depends on what it is that you have to say and how you want to say it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of songwriters start by using first person. Mm-hmm. So like, I am feeling this, that, the other thing. So if you feel like you're getting stuck, one thing that you might try is take all of that stuff that you developed, that you wrote in your diary or whatever, and change it to third person and see how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of room to experiment there in terms of point of view. So in terms of using some of these other poetic devices, like metaphor and simile and imagery, one of our favorite artists, Cate Le Bon, does a really, really wonderful job employing some of those poetic devices into her lyric writing. So we're going to play a song for you called I Can't Help You, and it's off of one of her albums from a few years ago called Mug Museum, which is fantastic. Highly recommend. So we're going to play this song, and we want you to kind of pay attention to the lyrics that you hear. There's a third part in this song where Cate Le Bon just busts out all of these similes, and it's a really cool moment of lyric writing. So let's take a quick listen to that and see how these lyrics sound to you. See if you can pick up on any of these kind of poetic devices.
Cut
Okay, that was a great one. I love all the guitars in that song. Just really beautiful, really intricate work. But we are here to talk about lyrics.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I wanted to draw your attention to was that third part with all of the similes, right? So similes use like or as to compare two different things that are not apparently similar. So if we focus in on that part, we have that sort of long list, right? Split me like timber, bend me like elbows, right? So that gives this song this whole new dimension of rich imagery that is a metaphor or a symbol for some things that might be happening to this speaker. But instead of telling us outright, using plainer language, Kate LeBon kind of codes things in these metaphors, and it adds this double layer of meaning and kind of defamiliarizes an emotion that we've experienced before and helps us kind of look at it in a new way. And for me, that's what kind of the best songs are able to do in terms of lyric writing.
Yeah, so the flip side of that would be using language that's really common or kind of expected. Now, there could be a place for that. Maybe you want to provide some kind of commentary on that. Or, maybe you're trying to write a humorous song and you precisely want to, use that to make some kind of joke or something. So there's always a place for everything. But if you're trying to write kind of innovative songs, you want to avoid the kind of expected lines that you might expect, right? So, for example, if you're writing about love and heartbreak and you say that's, so-and-so is cold as ice, everyone is going to expect that and they know what it means, right? Or if love cuts like a knife, right? You hear that a lot. Also doesn't really make a lot of sense, I don't think, right? And then also like things like soar like an eagle or fly like a bird or something like that. It's in so many songs at this point that people kind of expect it. And so there's not much of a payoff when you're using that, right?
Yeah, and writing a song is such a wonderful opportunity to, to use your own voice. So not to say you shouldn't ever stand on the shoulders of other songwriters, but, when you can, try to chart some new territory. Think about language in a way that feels new and fresh and exciting to you. And I think, what Dan said is absolutely true, that not every single song has to be super serious and profound and deep and meaningful. I think that there's a lot to be said for songs that don't do that, for songs that are fun and about feeling energetic. That's absolutely fine, and I love a bunch of songs just like that.
Yeah. I mean, even the Kate LeBon example, Bend Me Like Elbows is not super serious or dark. I mean, everyone has an elbow more or less, right? So it's not about being super serious. I think it's more really about trying to give a new angle to something that people have experienced emotionally, right? Trying to give it a new kind of shade or a new kind of meaning. So it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to go into your deepest, darkest place to do that. It's really just about, can you think of a new way to describe something that is common? Yeah,
and it's a really great opportunity to just get playful, to practice some free association, and to experiment, right? Turn down that little editor in your head that says, does this make sense? Shouldn't this look like this other thing that I know more about? And get rid of that. This is your opportunity to forge some new territory and make something new. So get playful and get experimental. Okay. So those were some of our tips for thinking about song structure and for thinking about how to approach lyric writing. So if you are a person who has a guitar or a piano or a bass or a drum kit at home, and you can try out some of these different song structures, that's amazing, and you should absolutely do that. If you don't have an instrument at your house, that's absolutely fine, and you can still practice some of these techniques at home without access to any instruments. So one technique that can be really helpful for that is to pick a song that you really like. Start by seeing if you can identify some of those different parts that we talked about, right? So the verse, the bridge, is there a third part? So kind of map out the song. And then swap out the existing lyrics of that song with your own original words and see how that feels. That's a really great way to sort of take a template that you already like and make it your own. It's a really kind of fun and easy stepping stone for making your own songs. And if you are interested in writing songs, definitely check out Girls Rock Reno this summer. You can find out more about us on our website, girlsrockreno.org. So this has been Dan and Casey from Fine Motor. We hope that this was helpful and that you're inspired to try writing your own songs and experimenting.
And you have your voice already, and you probably have access to pen and paper or a computer to write on. So you can start now, even if you don't know how to play an instrument yet. If you learn an instrument later, you can always add it to your existing lyrics.
Yep, absolutely. So if you are interested in songwriting and in making music, we hope that you'll check out Girls Rock Reno this summer. I'm going to be teaching drums along with my friend Bijou, and Dan is going to be helping to get gear for all of us to make lots and lots of noise on.
That's right.
So if you want to learn more, you can visit girlsrockreno.org, and we hope to see you at camp this summer. Oh, you can also email us the songs that you make. If this was helpful and you tried out some of these techniques, let us know how it went. You can email us at finemotormusic@gmail.com.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.